At the request of a subscriber, I'm going to accidentally start a virtual fistfight in the comments section. Today, I'm comparing the Nikon D780 versus the Z6ii to see who's the champion. But stick around until the end where I speculate on why the D780 happened at all. An apology or a genius money grab? The D780 and Z6ii both launched 7 months apart on January 6th and October 14th, 2020 off the back of the Nikon Z6 in 2018. They really have a ton of things in common, so this could be a tight race. Let's go. They both have the same 24.5 megapixel 35mm BSI CMOS sensors equipped with low-pass filters, if you care at all. They have the same image size of 6048 by 4024 and the same sensor dimensions of 35.9 by 23.9mm, which, interestingly enough, lengthwise, is 0.000000000000668458712222684 astronomical units. The sensors also have the same pixel pitch and native ISO of 100 to 51,200. No points so far. The D780 uses Nikon's F-mount while the Z6ii uses the Z-mount. Of course, there are more options for the F-mount currently, but the Z-mount easily has better optics technically, not character-wise, but technically. And all of the F-mount lenses can be adapted with this overpriced thing, while the D780 cannot support Z-mount lenses at all, so point for the Nikon Z6ii. The Z6ii uses dual X-Speed 6 processors, while the D780 uses one X-Speed 6. As long as Nikon continues to implement firmware that actually uses both processors on the Z6ii, it will always have an edge. Point for the Z6ii. They have different styles of viewfinders, the Z6ii being electronic versus the D780 being optical. This is still preference, so no points. Neither have built-in flash, but they have the exact same flash sync speed of 1/200. No points. I also can't award points on media storage. The Nikon Z6ii has one CF Express Type B and one SD UHS-2 slot, while the D780 has two SD UHS-2. I know that there's differences in reliability and speed and storage per dollar, but it kind of seems like people still have a preference, and so to save a debate on memory cards in the comment section, no points. Finally, a point can be awarded again for continuous shooting speed. The Nikon Z6ii will shoot 14 frames per second, while the D780 maxes out at 12, only with the electronic shutter and live view. Point for the Z6ii. Another point goes to the Z6ii for its buffer shooting. 124 12-bit lossless raw images to the D780's 100. But Nikon, you have some explaining to do, because I feel like if you have two processors in the Z6ii versus one in the D780, 24 does not seem like a huge difference considering it's rare that you're shooting that many images in a row. Both cameras have the same shutter speed range of 1/8000th to 900 seconds. And at this moment, I don't even know how to stack up the autofocus system, but I'm gonna give it a try. The Z6ii has 273 hybrid AF points with no difference between live view and viewfinder, while the D780 has 51 phase detect, 15 of which are cross-type AF points in the viewfinder, and 273 hybrid while in live view. Really, it's just kind of two different things. However, I've owned the D780 and still own the Z6ii, and I can tell you this, the auto area AF in the Z6ii still needs some work. In fact, it's embarrassing that it isn't as good as a DSLR, and the D780 autofocus is absolutely solid. So point for the D780. The Nikon Z6ii now feels insecure thinking it had this competition in the bag, so it slaps back a better autofocus detection range of -4.5 to +19 EV versus the D780's -3 to 19. That's a very small difference, but point for the Z6ii. At the making of this video, neither are super impressive in video features, so no points, but just in case you're curious, they share 420 8-bit internal, 4K UHD at up to 60 on the Z6ii and 30 on the D780, and 1080p up to 120 on both. The caveat of the Z6ii at 60p is it has a 1.5 crop factor, otherwise no real difference. If you use Atomos, there is still no difference, and they both will do 422 10-bit, so again, no points. They both have tilting touchscreens, same size, but the D780 has a marginal advantage in resolution at 2.36 million dots to the Z6ii's 2.1 million dots. Point for the D780. The D780 wins another point with a very impressive battery life of 2,260 shots compared to the Z6ii's 340. Shameful discrepancy. Keep in mind that these numbers on paper are always under real use numbers. Expect way more shots out of both cameras. To close out the paper specs, we have weight and size, which I don't care about, but YouTube watchers and reviewers alike made this into a heavy talking point. So, the Z6ii is lighter at 705 grams versus the D780's 840 grams. The Z6ii is smaller at 134 by 101 by 70 millimeter versus the D780's 143.5 by 115.5 by 76 millimeters. 2 points for the Z6ii, sadly. One more thing, the Nikon Z6ii launched at $2,000 USD to the D780's $2,300 USD. Point for the Z6ii for being the cheaper option at launch. Well, mirrorless wins again, but before you go, this isn't as cut and dry as the paper specs or the philosophical differences between the D850 and the Z7 II were. You can watch that video here. Earlier I mentioned that the D780 could be an apology or a greedy money grab, and I want to explain what I mean by that. But before I do, if this video gets 100 likes, one random subscriber will get to choose the next video. The randomly chosen subscriber will get to choose the camera and lens combination that I have to use for the photography genre of their choice. Be nice and choose the Z9 with a 105 f2.8 for a portrait shoot, or be mean and choose the Nikon Z5 with a 14-24 f2.8 for a wildlife shoot. Uh-oh. The choice could be yours if this video gets 100 likes. First, let me establish this. Even though the Z6ii wins on paper, objectively, I view these cameras as the same thing in different styles. The D780 is everything that Nikon could reasonably give you in a DSLR, and the main differences between the two are really DSLR versus mirrorless capability. The D780 won't do what mirrorless cameras can do in some aspects because it can't. It's a DSLR. But Nikon did give us some neat compromises when we use the D780 in live view. This is important to discern if we're going to have an argument of whether it's a money grab or an apology. I don't want to offend Nikon, but I don't trust suits, so how can the D780 be a greedy money grab? These two cameras launched very close to each other, and of course the Z6ii was already coming out. Camera companies plan ahead. Sure enough, no more f-mount lenses would be designed, and the production of existing designs, if not already dead, will continue to trickle away. Certainly Nikon was not oblivious to the backlash brought by the first line of Z cameras. Some valid, some petty. Thanks, YouTube. There were definitely some longtime Nikon shooters that were not convinced by the Z6 and Z7, so if this were a money grab, here, have a trusted Nikon product, a shiny new DSLR, and it's a newer, better version of the very popular D750. Oh, by the way, blam! We're shutting down f-mount lenses. So if we subscribe to this white-collar conspiracy theory and take the negative route, Nikon knew that they would probably have success off of the mirrorless holdouts since the Z6 and Z7 failed to blow people's minds. However, if you're a positive person, like me, how could this be an apology? Nikon is not a company run by idiots. I'm certain they knew that there were many people who wanted or needed something new, and again, with the Z6 and Z7 backlash I mentioned, there were still holdouts as well as folks that just like the DSLR experience. So maybe Nikon realized that taking the upcoming guts of the Z6ii with some compromises to work with DSLR and putting it into an already familiar DSLR style body wouldn't take that much time and R&D, and they didn't have to, but wanted to release the D780, which is an amazing mesh between old and new, giving the holdouts something new, familiar, rugged, and fantastic to ease them into the future that they have held out from, and satisfy their needs for many years to come when they eventually won't have a choice but to go used or go modern. A way to say, we know you need something and we couldn't convince you. Here is a much better D750 for the exact same launch price of 6 years ago. Me, I'll give Nikon the benefit of the doubt, because I can't see a better way to ease a skeptic into the future or reward a holdout for their loyalty until the day when Nikon can make them say, wow, with that spec sheet, I think it's finally time. The D780, regardless of the competition here and what the spec sheet says, is a sick DSLR. And if you still love the DSLR experience, I highly recommend you give it a try. I'm Z Wade, the Z Wade, and Z Wade Photo. Stay sharp, YouTube.